Bonjour à tous. Bonjour.
Good afternoon to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for being with us despite the scorching heat. Take a seat. I'd like to thank the Rencontre des Economists managers to welcome us. We'll be talking about a significant topic from new entrants to senior professionals, a sluggish labor market. We'll be elaborating on all of these questions and issues in France and elsewhere. What type of labor market do we have? How far it can be affected and hit by different events, the advent of AI. In order to talk about these topics, Stéphane Carcillo from the Cercle des Économistes, head of the Employment and Revenues Division at OECD, Myriam El Khomri, former Labour Ministry, she's the head of Diocese Consulting and Oasis, Benoît Derigny, Chairman of the Manpower Group in France, Laureline Serriès, General Manager of Uber in France, Jean-Baptiste Thomas, CEO of Amazon France, and Mrs. Abla Abdellatif, Executive Director of the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies. So we have a broad panel of speakers. First of all, we'll have a discussion, and then there will be a Q&A session. You will be able to react. So don't hesitate to write down your questions so that you can put them at the end of a session. But let us start with Stéphane Carcillo. What about the labor market? I mean, is the labor market slowing down? Thanks a lot, Fanny. Yes, the labor market is very sluggish at the present time. The unemployment rate is above 8% now. Nonetheless, there are some good news. I will be talking about the paradoxical situation. The employment rate has increased significantly. France has created lots of jobs for the past 15 years. The employment rate is above 69%, nudging 70%. So it's a significant increase. The employment rate was quite low in the past. And why is it so? Because of reforms that were adopted. Young people were better integrated into the labor market. Have in mind the reforms on apprenticeship. Other reforms improved the employment rate for senior citizens. Especially successive reforms were implemented. Pension reforms were launched, and the structural labor market has improved. Even though the unemployment rate has increased, I wouldn't say that it is a structural trend. It's a cyclical trend. According to the Banque de France, the structural rate of unemployment has dropped by 1.5 points. So at the end of the day, people might think that the reforms have no impact. We need to make a difference between underlying trends and cyclical trends. Of course, we've made headway with young people, with senior citizens in terms of employment, but we are not on a par with our neighbors, such as the Nordic countries, Germany or Austria. So we are lagging behind. Young people and senior citizens find it difficult to find a job. Regarding senior citizens, we've made some strides. If you look at the employment rate of those aged between 55 and 64 is 60%, but after 60 years of age, there's a drop, and people will move away from the labor market in a premature fashion, despite the different pension reforms. Just to remind you that the employment rate for 60 to 64, it is 50%. And it is 66% in Germany. So I can tell you we can make some progress. Regarding young people, the employment rate for the 15 to 24 years of age, it's about 33%, 42% for OECD countries, and 50% in Germany. The employment rate is 75% for young people in the Netherlands. So I would say that it is not a blatant failure. We have lots of young people with a long education, but they don't combine education and employment, or they don't combine enough employment on studies and education. We made some progress with the implementation of platforms, the NITs. What are the NITs? The NITs, these are people without any training, without a job, or people who do not attend school. But the NIT rate has decreased, but 12% of the 15 to 24 years of age are still NIT people. So what we need to do is to increase employment. Employment is important, to everybody. It is important to get a job. You have to think in mind of the budget and financial needs. If the employment rate was about 10%, close to Germany, and the employment rate of Germany is 90%, it would mean that we would get 146 billion more in terms of fiscal and tax receipts, 140 billion. So basically, it is the upside that is important. You have to consider the funding problems, because productivity gains have slowed down, and the population has also aged. So employment of young people and senior citizens is key for our economies and for our public finance. We've witnessed major transformations, so demographic, aging population, so young people and senior citizens should be able to get a job. So when you have an aging population, the active population has to increase if they are to pay for our pensions. And then you have a technological shock and the advent of AI. And this begs many questions. What about the professions of the future? The young people following some specific career paths, will they get a job? What about other jobs? Some jobs might vanish into thin air. So some jobs will be automated. It was not the case in the past. So this is one of the key questions that we'll try to answer today. And AI, should AI be an opportunity in order to make sure that senior citizens continue to work, in order to reduce arduous jobs, and the senior citizens could be able to learn new technologies and new expertise, so AI could be an opportunity. So there are different open-ended issues and questions for this insightful session. Thanks a lot, Stéphane. So this opens up many questions and issues. Myriam El Khomri, you're the Minister of Labour, the Minister of Work 10 years ago. With the El Khomri law in 2016, you are at the helm of Deuce CSI in a consulting division. So what about the labor market? What is your take on the labor market, and what are the weaknesses and any reasons for hope? Thanks a lot. Good afternoon to all of you. Stéphane is right. Of course, things are getting better. That's important to highlight that. It's a tangible situation. But there's another paradox that I would like to add. We have some companies and businesses that cannot hire people in some sectors. That's an important point. It's very often the same sector in the building industry, logistics, and caring for older people, and the employment rate is below that of some country. That's an important point, because you need to take into account attractiveness of some jobs. If I take into account demographic aging, we know that we have 60,000 jobs that are not filled. These jobs cannot be automated, they cannot be relocated, and it is 10% of jobs in the rural areas. I was the Minister of Labour, so it is an important point to highlight. So you need to consider the value of some jobs and professions, and we need to improve the attractiveness of some jobs. Then, as Stéphane pointed out, the market is fragmented. I would even even go so far as to say that you have a wide array of markets that are very different. And in my teams, we help 100,000 job seekers annually. So you have a wide array of markets. The markets are very different according to the regions. The markets are also different according to the level of skills, according to the same professions. Somebody who is under income support won't be helped in the same way as a person who had been graduated, or a senior citizen who is suffering from professional burnt out. But then you have to consider mobility. In France, and according to some surveys and studies, we have an issue. There are some jobs that are being created, but we have an issue with geographic mobility. And this is ascribable to the dynamism of the regions. In Vendée and in the mining areas, the employment rate is different. You have to consider other challenges, public transportation. If you accept a job 25 kilometers away from your home without a car, and if you are paid a minimum wage, the situation is quite difficult to sustain. And of course, you have attractiveness, economic attractiveness, how economic attractiveness is concentrated around the big cities. And there's another parameter to take into account. You have to consider housing. Housing-related issues are quite important when it comes to accepting a job. And this is a trend that has gone unabated. HR managers have told us, I don't know what to do about housing. And this is what we face. So, of course, there are some pieces of good news, but as I told you, there is a wide array of markets, low mobility, and different regional aspects differ. So you're at the helm of Manpower France, and you have an overview of the regions. And Benoît Derigny. So Stéphane talked about structural topics. I share the study. The dynamics of employment has decreased in the third quarter, so we question 1,000 companies every quarter, and we ask them, do you want to hire? Are you going to maintain the employment rate? And then we do the maths. Then we compute an index. First quarter was 35, second quarter 17, and third quarter it was 0. So it does say quite a lot. Employment has deteriorated, and the situation is very unstable. But there are some interesting parameters when you look at the different business sectors. You have some sectors that are extremely dynamic: aerospace, aeronautics, energy, transportation, equipment. So you have business sectors that are in a bad patch. For example, household consumption, agri-food industry, car industry. And of course, you have to consider the electric cars and the thermal cars. And companies with more than 1,000 employees are more affected. So if you look at this indicator, you have to consider the international situation. That is important. But there's a shock absorber, and there are some opportunities. This shock absorber is about demographics in the field of defense, aeronautics, and aerospace. This is a sector with 300,000 people who will be recruited, 300,000 jobs will be created, and 60,000 people will retire. That's a great opportunity. A second parameter that I would like to highlight, and it's about attractiveness. You have all of the technical and manual jobs. So most of the time, we are dealing with the same sectors of these technical and manual jobs. When we talk about sovereignty, if you consider those jobs and professions, I mean, the age pyramid will have an impact. And of course, what is important is to attract young people. And so young people will move away from these jobs, And it's very difficult to fill out these vacancies. So these jobs and professions have a lot of meaning. They are tangible, they are concrete, they are not disrupted by AI, and of course they can't be relocated. Laureline Charriez from Uber, General Manager of Uber France. No issue with attractiveness. That's quite interesting to see how the platform-based economy can contribute to the different topics that you've raised. So there are two specific dimensions to consider. Especially Mr. Cancillo, what is important is to consider the employment of senior citizens. 55, 64 years, the employment rate has increased by 20%, but for the rest, we are not on a par with our neighbors. But when you look at young people, those aged between 18 and 24 years of age, population, the unemployment rate has increased quite significantly for these young people. Let's cast a future-oriented eye. So if you look into the future, careers are fragmented. What do I mean by fragmented careers? A permanent contract is a stable form of employment. There are some people who can enjoy permanent contracts, but if you consider the OECD surveys, a career will span 40 years. People will move from one job to another. People will be a salaried worker, then they will be freelance workers. So what is important to know for us, we a platform, we can work with different people on a freelance basis. At Uber, there are some interesting elements. If you want to be a driver on Uber, on the Uber platform, the recruitment process is not mainstream. No interview, no motivation letter. You need to get the test, the driving test. The police authorities will check your abilities, and then you can discharge your activities. So if you look at this opportunity, young people and senior citizens embrace this opportunity. So we question those two categories of people. For young people, those under 30 years of age, 72% of them have said that becoming a driver with Uber was an opportunity to get access to an income-generated activity. For those who are aged over 50, they said that becoming a Uber driver made it possible to get a job at a time when it was very difficult for them to have a job. And there's another question that is being raised, the working conditions on the platform. We have worked a lot on that, and regulations have helped us quite a lot, and we have in mind the El Khomri law. We've managed to forge a social dialogue, but I don't want this issue to sidestep another topic, professional transition. If you look at the 10 next years, the business of taxi drivers will continue to increase with lots of opportunities, especially in large regions, but in poorly dense areas, there are lots of economic opportunities to tap at a time when the labor market is slowing down. Can you tell me if there are more Uber drivers, junior drivers, senior drivers, or people with a professional transition? Yes, young people and senior citizens account for a third of the drivers on the platform. If I take into account the senior citizens, those aged over 50, there are 2/3 who were unemployed for 1 year before becoming Uber drivers. So they can be able to reintegrate the labor market. Jean-Baptiste Thomas, you are at the helm of Amazon France, another platform, and in fact in France you've opened a new store in the Rhône-Alpes region. Is it difficult for you to recruit? Allow me to make an additional comment. So we recruit people in the field, and we are facing the harsh realities. So we are the first job creator, 25,000 jobs as part of permanent contracts. A warehouse will open, 8,000 jobs will be created. These will be permanent contracts for the next 3 years. Allow me to echo some points that have been raised. For us, what is at stake is to create jobs, accessible, affordable jobs without any conditions in terms of CVs, in terms of degrees. We don't want to discriminate people with age. A degree is an obstacle when you want to access the job market. We have no quotas. We are working with France Travail. We've been working with France Travail. We are using a recruitment method based on simulation. So 61% of our employees are under 35, 16% are senior citizens on our new sites. We've just opened yesterday in Colombier-Saunier, next to Lyon, 20% for the first hirings or recruitments. 20% of them were on income support. 20% come from neighborhoods which are facing tough problems. So public-private partnership is pivotal when it comes to recruiting. So we got 10,000 applications. So 3,000 jobs with permanent contracts. So we recruited 1,000 people already, and for the rest of the year we hope that we'll be able to recruit 3,000 people with permanent contracts. I do agree with you with the public transport issue. I was in the brand new warehouse at Colombier-Saunier. Public transportation, housing can be stumbling blocks. We recruit locally. 80% of the employees are living in 25-kilometer radius of the warehouse, but when you get your first job, the distance can be an issue. Regarding logistics, regarding automation, AI will help us, and AI helped us reduce senior citizens, reducing hardness at work, reducing repetitive movements, reducing the heavy workload. It reduces the number of kilometers that you have to drive. As part of the technology, ergonomics is being taken into account for the employees, so this can help quite a lot. Logistics is not a very attractive business. This is what you said, but we have candidates. What is important is to offer good salaries and career prospects. So we are making sure that we can develop of our employees. I mean, 75% of our managers were people who prepared orders, and they received some training programs in order to become managers. And this is what we need to offer to people who have their first jobs, so that they can build up the career path. Mrs. Abdel Atif, you come from Egypt. You are at the helm of the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies. What do you want to tell us about this labor market? Do you have a mic, by the way? So good afternoon to all of you. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I will start in French. I can speak French for social matters, but for technical matters I need to use English. So I will say a few words in French. It's even hotter in France than in Egypt. So if you go to Cairo, you will be better off.
Two things, or three quick things. One, a quick comment about the French job market, which was very well described by all my colleagues. Second point is to mention few facts related to the job market everywhere, not just in France. And the third is to make some observations related to AI and its impact on the job market. And I think it's essential, and it cannot be taken out of the discussion. On the French side, you are, of course, worried about France because you are French, okay? But what's happening in France is happening all over the world, in all countries. Everybody is suffering from unemployment, very structural in nature. Everyone is facing the same problems. The question is how to try to approach it and what kind of policies to adopt. So don't worry very much about the French market. It will get better like the others. On the job market in general, fact number one, observation number one, there is asymmetry of information, which means that not everyone has this information. Specifically, I'm talking about the three players in the market. Who are the three players? The government is a player, the firms, enterprises, and the people, young or old, it doesn't matter. But these are the three players. The information that they have about the job market is not the same. And because of this asymmetry in information, you find some that have good chances, others that don't, and you observe a lot of what's happening. So this is a fact number one. Fact number two, artificial intelligence is a fact of life that we cannot ignore, and it is changing extremely fast. And learning how to cope with it should be the main concern. The third one, younger people are better capable of learning new tricks, okay, and new things related to AI than the old. But the old at the same time have the experience. And people who use AI tools, even the simple ones like ChatGPT, in a field that they don't know and they don't understand, they make disasters, right? Because the experience here is very relevant and it reveals a lot of things. Okay, so these are some of the facts. On AI, and this is very important, AI, and the results are coming actually from a lot of work that we've been doing on understanding the effect of AI on the job market in Egypt, and I will explain this later. But observation number one, and it is key, jobs are not going to disappear. Jobs do not disappear. What is happening is there are certain tasks within the jobs that can be replaced. And the tasks usually come in three types. Primary tasks, things that are very, very basic. Secondary tasks, which are a bit more technical, not terribly basic, but second, and then ancillary tasks, which are supportive and of higher level. And the replacement is happening, the highest risk is happening at the primary level, and a lot less in the second, and a lot less in the third, okay? Which means that human beings are going to continue to be part of the job. The question is how it should be played. So this is observation number one. Observation number two, just a piece of news that has just been out, company Ford, has decided to bring back 350 of its senior employees, which they fired very recently because of AI. Their jobs got replaced, so they fired them. Now they are taking them back. Why are they taking them back? Because their observations and the way they looked at the quality of things and the designs, et cetera, was not captured by AI and could not be captured by AI, which means that the seniors, okay, at all levels have an experience and have a chance, okay? The third observation is that it's not a hopeless thing. People whose jobs or the main tasks are being replaced does not mean that they cannot have jobs anymore. One of the things that we reach in our model is that there are something what is called bridging skills, new skills that they can learn that can move them to what we chose to call job communities, which means jobs which are more or less around what you are doing now, in the same area, but you need to know this new skill. You're going to keep some of what you already have, you are going to drop some, but you are going to keep to earn some new skills to fit you to another job where the level of risk is lower. You just need to know about that job. And there are new jobs that are being created with AI completely. What we like to call AI native, which are jobs that are purely AI, and what is called AI transformative. Again, these are our terminology, which are jobs that are changing in nature because of AI. Content in everything, for instance. What you need is checking the quality of the content. This is a new job that is created through AI. So AI can do its mess, but somebody has to clean the mess, okay? These are all observations, and based on the facts related to the job market and these observations, I think the key question that we have to answer is how do we accommodate that change? Who should initiate it? Okay, because we can talk from now until tomorrow about what needs to be done. The question is who should initiate it and how to initiate it and how long this is going to take, because we do not have the luxury of time. And I hope that the Egyptian experience here in what we did at the center can help a lot. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Peut-être qu'on peut poursuivre justement.
Perhaps we can continue our discussion on changes that are occurring on the work market. Who would like to react? You talked a little bit about it, but at Uber, for example, what is it going to change? A lot of things. At Uber, like in all companies, but if we look at opportunities that are created, and as I said earlier on, the jobs that we are offering, the work that we are offering on the Uber platform, is work that can be used as a conversion opportunity. So a driver will stay with us for about 3 years. And the youngsters are really grasping this opportunity. And many of them are saying that thanks to Uber, they've got their foot on the first rung of the work ladder. And the youngsters who join us know that it's not their vocation. They're not going to stay Uber drivers for the rest of their life. But it's important to point out that when you've got a first job experience, a work experience, that means you're more employable subsequently. So it's a moment of transition where a lot of new jobs and professions are going to be created, others are going to be changing. So this can be a transition opportunity working for Uber, which is very valuable. So that's one aspect. And we are transforming also, and I think a lot of the transformation for us at Uber is the question of these driverless vehicles. And so it's no longer just a hypothesis. This is something which really exists in the United States. This is a business which we're going to start this year. We're going to test it in London and Madrid, for example. So that means that some jobs will disappear. That means that, yes, of course, there will be an impact on employment, but we are saying in Uber today is that the model will have to be a hybrid model, because having someone drive you somewhere, it's not a linear experience. So it can be one step towards driverless cars. So we're going to start with human beings remaining in the system, but then not every type of ride is suitable for AI, or the weather isn't always conducive to a driverless car. There are certain parts of a city, for example, which aren't suitable for driverless cars, a historical part of a city, for example. There's also the question of the adoption curve by users. So not everybody's going to all of a sudden want to have a driverless vehicle. And above and beyond that, there's the question at the very heart of it all, which is employment. All of this is going to happen very progressively, and a driver stays with us for about 3 years. So we're going to have to build partnerships with the public authorities to go hand in hand and to accompany this job transformation, because new jobs are being created in our sector, for example. All of that work on maintaining driverless vehicles, for example. So up until now, a Uber driver will take care of his own vehicle, but we will have supervisors and mechanics who will take care of these cars. And so we'll have an eye on those cars day and night. So the sector is creating new jobs as well. I think one of you said, talk about qualifications. Yes, someone said that a qualification can be a bit of a drawback, really, if you're too qualified. And could this mean that this is an end to the work market as we've known it, where qualifications are no longer the be-all and end-all? Well, in France, your qualifications are still very important. But to wrap up on AI, the subject of soft skills, which we often talk about, but even more so when we talk about AI, they are becoming more important, because you need to be curious. You need to have to learn how to learn. You have to be creative. You have to know how to work as a team player. And that's not what you're going to learn at school. Well, you learn on the sidelines at school, but it's not going to get you a qualification or a diploma. I would add one point about these juniors and these seniors, those without experience, those with experience faced with AI. I think the seniors are better equipped, strangely enough, particularly when we're talking about this rational AI. Let me explain why. Because they've worked without it in the past, and they are better placed to challenge artificial intelligence and the quality of its responses. So they're not hoodwinked by this mirage, whereas the youngsters know how to manipulate AI, but they haven't got that perspective that their elders have. They haven't got that life experience that enables them to challenge AI. This is the fruit of my observations and experience working with teams, and it's also the result of discussions I've had with some of my clients. And some people say the younger generation, which is coming up onto the work market, studied with AI. So they are really at ease. They are super at ease with AI. Those who are having a harder time of it are those in their 30s. They didn't study with AI, so they've got to catch up ground there. But on the other hand, those who have got more experience, they have been able to adopt AI, but as if it's a new work colleague. So these seniors are able to prompt better, to challenge the quality of the answers, and to push AI or generational AI further in what it can contribute to a team's efforts. So, Miriam El Khomri, what about these qualifications then? One thing is certain, and it has not changed: the higher your qualifications, then the faster you'll get a job and you'll be in employment stably and for long term. That has been the case forever, since forever. But it doesn't protect you from everything, but it does. A good qualification creates an inequality when you're entering into the work market. That's the first point. Second point, and I want to come back on what you've just said, the question of AI today and the impact on employment. We don't know what the impact's going to be. All studies that are being published, even from the United States, show that the impact on employment, despite what has been said, is that it's an unknown quantity. However, one thing is sure. It begs the question of technological, organizational maturity, for example. It's a question of productivity, which is vital in some industries. Let's take a look at the car industry. It's taken us 3 years to come up with a new project. The Chinese take 6 months. And perhaps AI will help us to do our project in 9 months. That could be a reality which will help some parts of industry. But behind that, there is a message, and I agree here. Today, the problem we've got is organizing the transition. We know how to create these motorways, the fast track, but here we have to take the cross-country road. The question of training is very present. We're all talking about it in France. However, it's not to be taken as a stock which you acquire at the beginning of your career. No, it's now a question of constantly being able to redirect yourself. And there's a study recently shown that 3 years after a first job, over 25% of youngsters change their path, their career path. That's a quarter of them. It's quite unexpected. That's a high number. And if I can talk about the seniors now, there's another problem for seniors. When I was talking about the appeal of logistics, there are many job offers which are not fulfilled in logistics and home helps, for example. So there's still a lot of job offers around, but 30% of people who leave their job aren't going directly into retirement, and that's increasingly frequent. Let's take a look at those aged between 55 and 60, and then the 60 to 64. And here, in these age groups, we see that a lot of those seniors, and we can see this at the end of careers, we have about 10,000 retirement plans at Diocesi, where I work. And so there's a lot of them leave the work market because they're ill or to go on to unemployment, etc. And in some jobs, let me make a direct link with the recruitment problems. In certain areas, in home helps and buildings, a lot of people are leaving their jobs without necessarily to go to another job. So it's not always a question of qualification. It's the sustainability of some jobs and our ability upstream to enable people to switch professional paths. When you've got 7 out of 10 people who leave their job before they retire, they've been on certain specific professions. So I think it's a good idea to create a transition and to improve transitions. Jean-Baptiste Thomas at Amazon, you've got a lot of people who are transitioning or changing paths? Yeah, the site we opened at Olney a few years ago, 4,000 full-time employees, 75% were job seekers at the time, and a third of them were looking for a long-time job. So our role, getting back to qualifications, yes, I agree with you, a qualification is important, but there's a social responsibility that a company has to create access to roles to people who don't have a qualification. We mustn't discriminate about these qualifications or about age. We mustn't discriminate. I was talking about yesterday with a woman working at our new site, explaining that she had answered an ad at the Job Seekers Centre. She got a couple of gaps in her CV because she'd been on some training courses, but she couldn't find a job because companies didn't want her because they didn't find these 2 yearly gaps in her CV very convincing. They thought it was a bit suspicious, so she couldn't get a job. It really is important to allow people to get into the job market. Talking about AI now. Yes, it's true we don't know what the situation is, but there are many jobs which are being transformed. At our warehouses where we have lots of robots, that's where we've got most employees. When we robotize and modernize a warehouse which was opened several years ago, we create jobs, 30% more jobs, because there are more needs, maintenance, robotics, and because we're more efficient. And we use more parcels, so we recruit more people. It's counterintuitive, yes, I'm sure you're thinking. And I can understand what fears are with AI. People say it's going to kill employment. I think we do not know, and there are some counter-examples where AI has created jobs. And it can help the seniors to get back into employment. And that's what we're completely convinced about. So I think AI can help get people back into work. So AI and work. So Abla Abdel Latif, do you want to say a few words to wrap up on this subject?
I'm going to talk about the Egyptian experience. Let me first say that if there is going to be a difference in France or anyone else, the one who can do the playing is the government. Firms are after their own profit. They're going to cut costs. You cannot force them. You can provide incentives. Young people, you cannot force them, but you can make learning easier and cheaper for them. What we did in Egypt over 4 years, in the center, is have 4 people. They're all Gen Zs who are receiving their salaries to innovate, almost repeating the Shenzhen model in China. They were studying the job market in Egypt, which suffers from exactly the same problems. We know the supply, we know the graduates, but we don't know anything about the demand in the market. And so you have structural unemployment. You have jobs that are looking for people and people that are looking for jobs. So they started to study the market, and on quarterly basis, we measure the pulse of the market. We know the jobs that are there through the ads that they put on the internet, and we use AI tools to collect those ads and get the information. Knowing that, we started to go deeper and understand how AI is going to affect, and we ended up developing a tool which is in the demo stage now called Jobit, where you can access all information about the job market, you can access career advising, and you can even revise content, educational content in the universities in order to fit. I think this could be very useful for France in many ways, in making the information available, in providing incentives for firms, and making those tools available for free for young people. Those who have the passion are going to search for the jobs.
Merci beaucoup pour ces conseils. Peut-être quelques questions?
Thank you very much for that advice. Any questions in the room? If you raise your hand, we'll bring a microphone to you. Kindly introduce yourself. Hello. I'm Sophie. I'm an economics and management teacher, and I'm a former business lawyer. I'm listening to you all, And I have one comment which leads me to a question. We hear about the advantages for the employment market, things that have been done for apprentices, for seniors. However, a lot of tax advantages have been reduced, and for the seniors, priority to youngsters. I think it's kind of contradictory with what I teach my students. Capgemini has fired some white-collar workers, where people are saying that it's the underqualified people, the unskilled labourers who are going to disappear. And I echo what the Amazon chappie has been saying. Yes, it's the most highly qualified workers who can benefit from AI because they can learn. So what's your question then? Is it that AI is going to hit the white-collar workers harder? Is that your question? Okay, what's the answer? I've got a testimonial. In all businesses, there's a notion of your heart, your relationship, your spirit, and manual aspect. I am convinced that all of those manual jobs and those which involve heart and your relationships will thrive. And in other jobs, they're going to have to develop those three things. It's not a question of where am I going to put AI, it's going to be everywhere. The question is, where am I going to leave human relationships? And I'm coming back to this very precise point. In all of the blue-collar workers, or I think is a bit of a stupid name, it's very reductive, it's rather pejorative also, but all of those manual and technical jobs are where there really is a future in France. Because it's a question of sovereignty, there's a question of reindustrialization, defense, and these jobs will, of course, evolve with AI. On the other hand, they have meaning and they are needed. I've got 20,000 jobs to be filled, 6,000 full-time jobs. A lot of them are blue-collar workers' jobs. Another question, perhaps? Hello, Alexander. I'm an entrepreneur. I come from a big family of entrepreneurs from the north of France. You haven't talked about entrepreneurship and how we can encourage youngsters and seniors to become entrepreneurs and create their own business. Perhaps I could hear from you, the former minister, for example. It's great if you can create jobs, if you create your own enterprise, your own business, it's fine. And a lot of people who found their own business are assisted. And that's why we're saying we really need to work on this transition rather than these stop and start careers. We need to change status, in France, everyone has money allotted to them so they can train in another field. It's coming to an end. That's a shame. But the problem was that we didn't line that up with the jobs that were needed in certain sectors of industry. But if we look to the jobs of the future, there is the reality of the situation. Temp work is a very responsible approach. It's a way in to the work market, not only for youngsters but for those people who are changing track. The system is based on employing those who can work, and we can be very proud that when someone has done 400 odd hours a week, then they're contributing to social security, to an employment benefit, and to your pension, etc. And we can be proud of that. So we really have to finance our system that protects us, and we have to make sure people are all working, because every worker contributes to the social security system. A final question. Yep, there's a hand raised. Yeah, I've got a comment. I agree with Madame Abdelatif. Yeah, youngsters and seniors on the job market. In France, we're reforming pensions, etc. I'm 56 years old and I cost too much. I'm too expensive. So we are calling seniors back to work because of their skills. So rather than make a battle between youngsters and the seniors, why don't we put them on the same team, combine them, and make all of the businesses more competitive? Well, a lot goes to show that employing seniors is not the enemy of employing youngsters. Those countries with the highest youth employment records are the same, also have the highest senior employment records, simply because we're not talking about the same jobs or the same skill sets. When you get rid of a job and taken by a senior, you're not going to replace that job by a job that can be filled by a beginner. So we're not opposing them. We have to, on the other hand, make them more complementary. They don't have the same skills or the same experience in terms of AI, amongst other things. They can be very complementary. So for a very long time in France, we got the feeling that we could share work. But we've forgotten all about that since the years 2000, etc. Now we think we want to have everybody on the market. But and those seniors who are staying in work are not depriving youngsters of jobs. Let me give you a couple of statistics talking about temp work. It's 50% of temps are under 30 years old, and 18% are over 50. So the younger ones need experience, and the older ones need opportunities. And in many cases, they are employed. They're recruited full time. So for the seniors, they work 600 hours in a year, and then they will find an opportunity after temp working. Whereas for the youngsters, it's 400 hours. So they're different things. So one lot needs opportunity, the other needs experience. So they're building up a curriculum. Anything to add? Oh, there's a final question there. Can we hand a microphone to that person? Well, I'll sacrifice my own microphone. Hello. I'm a student. I'm a first year. I'm studying applied economics. And I want to come back to one of the points which you mentioned. You said that youngsters are discriminated because of their age, their lack of experience, and because they're not yet fully qualified. I think we're going to have to accept that kind of profile. Is that not risky for the businesses? Will businesses want to recruit such youngsters? Well, I think it depends what kind of job you're talking about. You can't give a blanket response to this. There are some jobs where we'll continue to need to have qualifications and training. There are other jobs where I believe that the business takes a responsibility to train the employees, particularly the youngsters, and those who have not been able to join the job market. They need to invest to train their employees and give them a career. Yes, there are certain positions. If you want to be an engineer in robotics, then you're going to, of course, have to have some qualifications and some experience, of course, to be able to do that job. But there are other roles, and I think we need to be open to that and to be prepared to take risks and shepherd the youngsters. We have to help people. If you recruit someone who has been outside of the labour market for a long time, or you're recruiting a senior, it's the firm manager who has a responsibility there to help that new recruit. Okay, Stéphane, do you want to wrap up? Yeah, there is a leitmotif running through everything which we've been talking about. It's a question of transition and information and careers guidance. There are a lot of jobs that exist for youngsters and seniors. They can be opportunities. France doesn't have very good bridges between one job and another. We've got a lot of help from unemployment to a job, but we're not so good at job to different job. So for youngsters and for seniors as well. For youngsters, this is what you were saying, Miriam, earlier on. The fact that we change jobs so frequently after 3 years, it means, did we have the right careers advice to begin with? Were we on the right track to begin with? So this question of careers advice, we need to persuade youngsters to go to those sectors which have jobs to offer, including those jobs which are going to be upturned by AI. AI isn't only a question of substitution, it's also increasing the number of jobs and increasing productivity. There have been some very many examples. You can, for example, wipe out some jobs but create a whole bunch of other jobs in a different sector. So there are opportunities, but the key really is careers advice and sharing information. And in this field, whether we're talking about careers advice for youngsters or careers advice for those people who want to train to do a different job or using their French budget that they get from the state to do that or something else, there are many things that can be enhanced in accessing to training and the displaying of different opportunities to convince youngsters and juniors to go to those sectors where there are many opportunities. Thank you very much. That helps me say that these Rencontres du Cercle is a great platform for exchanges. There are going to be many more roundtables that you can witness. If you can't be live in the room at the time, remember you can watch a recording of all of the different roundtables later on. So.